Lorraine and I'm the Learning in Libraries North Hampshire dressmaking tutor. I teach in Farnborough, Fleet and Yateley Library. I also am a lecturer of fashion at Farnborough College of Technology for the level 3, and I also run my own business and I'm in my studio at the moment. I do clothing alterations and tailoring, and by trade I was a pattern cutter. I just thought I'd like to give you a short video just to demonstrate a couple of the terminologies that is involved with the patterns that you buy, your domestic patterns that you might come across, especially if you're just starting out. Some of the jargon you might get a little bit confused with. So I've just put together a little video just to explain the difference between the top stitching and the understitching. I hope you enjoy. So I just wanted to go over a description of the difference between understitching and top stitching. It's part of the terminology that you'll find on your pattern handouts. I've just got some squares that I've used for the sake of this video for sampling. You can see I've knitted with an overlocked edge. That's in America, that's an English term. In America they use serged edge, serger, and we use overlocker. So you'll also hear terminology about right side and wrong side. So you have a right side and a wrong side of your fabric. It's quite difficult sometimes to distinguish between the two when it's plain. So using the tailor's chalk, I would just mark a cross on the wrong side of the fabric, and that's how I would distinguish between the right and the wrong side when I've cut it. Okay, it is difficult to tell on some fabrics. Obviously if it's a pattern then it's easier. So once you've distinguished between your right side and wrong side, you put right sides together. So that's as worn, that's the correct side of the fabric. Put your right side onto your right side. So I'm just going to start with a seam. It depends, it will be written in your pattern instructions what seam allowance you will use. You can see this is imperial. A lot of the garment industry is imperial. You distinguish between the two of them. So most domestic patterns that you find would be 1.5, which is 5/8 of an inch. In industry they are much smaller, a centimetre or 1/4 of an inch. So always start by locking your stitches backwards and forwards. The straight stitch is called a lock stitch, and it's just the top and the bottom thread with the bobbin, and just sew it neatly with your seam allowance. So I'm using 1.5 centimetres or 5/8 of an inch in this case. Always trim your threads as you go. One of the best tips I was given by a machinist. Okay, and then normally at this point we would underpress. Underpressing is when you get your iron and you press the seams. So this is open seam construction, where they are then pressed open like this. So you would press those neatly, and if you're going to apply a top stitch, you would make sure that's right on the edge, and then it's really deciding as your pattern what seam, what width you would like your top stitch to be. So it's decorative, so I'm going to go for 1/4 of an inch, which is about 7 millimeters, and again always secure your stitching backwards and forwards. So I've done this where that overlapped as if this was on the top edge of a skirt, or maybe a facing edge, or a placket on a shirt, something like that. So I've done those as mimicking the top edge of a skirt, like a waistband. So you can see that would be the top, and that's a top stitch with a distance parallel there of 1/4 of an inch or 7 millimeters. So that is your top stitching. We'll put that to one side. Now I just want to explain the difference with an understitch. Again, your terminology. So I've marked my wrong sides, and again I'm going to join them together. This time I'm going to use 1/4 of an inch. It doesn't matter what seam allowance, but just to show you it's different. And again, this is normally an understitch, holds it back without the stitching showing, but we would use it so that it holds the underside away and it rolls back. So this would be used for a waistband. So you would normally take this to your iron and press it, but this time you would press it with the seams both going to one side. So you could do your understitch on this side, but I am industry based and we always do it this side. But the importance is that when you stitch it, you pull those apart. What you don't want is it stitching and it forming this pleat. So that's why I prefer to understitch on the top. And what we're doing is we're stitching all of the seam allowances onto the facing, the underside, the bit that's going to be on the inside of the garment. Because what we're doing is enabling the seam allowances to stay and to stop it rolling over. So I'm just gently pulling that as it goes. I've done it in a contrasting thread for the video so that you can see for the demonstration what the stitching looks like. Just about 3 or 4 stitches backwards and forwards to secure. So just like on our top stitch, this will be the inside of the garment with the understitching, and you can see that it rolls that over so that it sits on the inside. So this is the inside of the garment. This would be on a waistband, on a facing, around the neck and the armhole, and you can see that when you press that, it's holding. Okay, it's holding, it's allowing this to roll and stopping it rolling out and therefore not being seen. So this would be around a neckline, a shaped neckline, an armhole, top of a waistband of a skirt, and this is called understitching. So you can see the difference. The understitching is on the inside and this is the outside of the garment. So if you were wearing this, this is what you see, and on the inside is the understitching. But a top stitch is seen both on the outside, the good side, and the inside of the garment. So there's a difference between understitching, which is to stop the rolling, hold it inside, and your top stitch, which is visible.